Hey everyone, it's Eva here. And this video is specifically a shout out to all of my sensitive people um, who take their time processing and who like to go slow. And I just want to say that I never want you to feel apologetic for going slow and for taking the time that you need, which is not the same thing as avoidance, by the way. It's more like some of us, I think, just need more time to process life. And I very much fall into this camp. And so I want to share with you like my experience with this. And also just ultimately, again, the goal is to be like, if you are someone who can really relate to this, to know that you can relax, ease into your process, own who you are, feel confident in the way that you do things, and never have to feel guilty for doing something that's actually ultimately going to serve you really, really well. Oh, that's my phone. Okay. So what do I mean? Like, where do I want to start with this? I'm someone who takes a long time to process things, whether it's like an idea, a situation, um, like like a project, a work thing, any type of creation, a new idea, I don't know, conflict. Like I need to sort of go within myself and get some solitude. And I may not even be actively thinking about like, okay, like what do I think about this? And it doesn't feel like this control thing that I'm doing. It's more like I just need time to myself. And sometimes it seems like unconsciously, like in my subconscious mind is like doing the figuring out. But it can't do that if I'm like busy running around, distracting myself with a bunch of things. I just need to be in my own space for a little bit. And like my partner knows this. Like sometimes if we like get into an argument, sometimes I'll be like, you know what? I don't even like, I just need to go away for a little bit by myself before we can hash this out, because I'm not going to be helpful to you right now until I get some space. And then I'll come back to the space and I'll be like in a totally different, more present, less reactive mind space. And then I can like show up to this conversation from that space, which is then so much easier because then we're like efficient. By the time I come back, we're like efficient. We figure things out and everything, the communication is clearer, stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would attribute this to the fact that I'm like sensitive, because I think sensitive means different things to different people. I think sometimes it can have a negative connotation that like being to be sensitive means that you are somehow weak or not strong or less than, which is like not at all true. Sensitivity, I think, can be a real gift if you know how to honor it. And I would say that when I say I'm sensitive, it's more just that I feel things really deeply. And that's not true of all things too. Sure, I think we all feel certain things really deeply, but also I think I'm just attuned to a lot of things. And by sensitive, I also mean like I just don't process things quickly. And there are some people out there, I know I have friends who just like are boom, 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 boom. Like they can respond to life really sharply. They're like, it's almost like, yeah, I mean, I don't even go into details or examples, but I think there are some people who their nervous system maybe just works differently and they're like quick. I think I'm actually quite quick under duress, like in traumatic situations. My survival instinct turns on right away because I've been in situations before where I had to like keep myself safe. And so in those moments, I can be like really, really quick. But in general, I just like to take my fucking time. I like to go slow. And the reason I feel compelled to talk about this is because for a long time, I felt bad about that. I felt guilty about it. I felt self-indulgent. I felt like there was a selfishness and that like I just needed to like sit on things for a while. I felt maybe like less than, or like I would push myself. I'd be like, I wish I could just like do things faster. Because again, like that it wasn't because my soul wanted to do things faster. It's only because I felt some pressure from like the outside world to need to keep up in order to be effective or valuable or you know, some kind of thing. It was like very much this like intense capitalistic pressure that we have that says fast is good and therefore slow is bad. and and so for a long time, but at the same time, so what's interesting is I would say this has kind of been like how I've been my entire life. Oh God. And then, oh God, even as I say this, I'm like, oh, well, I don't know. There's paradoxes and there's polarities. Like I can be quick in some areas of my life, and there are other times where I just really need to take my time. And I would assume that's probably true for a lot of people, that there's some things that you can process really quickly, some things you get done really quickly, and other things you just need more time for. But generally, I hate being rushed. I hate being rushed. And again, so my whole thing is like, for the longest time, I really judged myself for this and I didn't like this. And I think I felt apologetic about the fact that I needed to take time. And when I say I needed to take time, it's like, even in college, when I like lived in this crazy house with just like a bunch of my, like, I don't even know what I would call it, just a house of degenerates. And I use that word affectionately, like we were out of our minds, and there was just like a lot of stuff going on all the time, and it was a wild and fun time in my life. But I always needed time to myself, always. And I would always have to escape to my own room, and people would be like, Eva, like, what are you doing? Why are you always? And I'd always be like, oh, I have work to do, is what I would say. And people would always be like, you're always doing work. Like, what work do you have to do? And it was just my way of not being able to express, like, I just need space and time. And I felt like I constantly had to be like defending this to other people. And then, you know, when I say I process a lot, I have my own way of processing things. I like to journal a lot. I like to do like audio journals. I go on long walks. Some people, it could be something be more active, like maybe you are playing an instrument or you are in some sort of creative process. Whatever it is, your thing is like, for me, when I was journaling, I was like, I would feel, again, guilty. Like it wasn't okay for me to be taking up this much space, because taking up time is kind of like taking up space. And I was like, I feel like I should feel bad for taking this much space or wanting to take this much time to do my own thing, because that's like indulgent. Now, fast forward, you know, gosh, 20 years later, has been that long, 15 years later, and I see actually how that has served me so much. So what do I mean by that? How has that served me so much? I now see that because I take my time to really process things, by the time I like get something, I fucking get it. It's fully integrated. I know how to like talk about it. I know how I feel about it. I feel really solid in myself because I've done my homework, essentially, instead of like rushing through that. And this thing where I thought I was actually always wasting time has actually turned out to be, I think, one of my greatest gifts. And I actually feel a lot of regret and remorse for all those years in my younger self that I didn't see it that way, that I actually saw this as a problem, when this whole time I could have been treating this gift of mine as, you know, how I treat it now, which is like a blessing. And then I feel like I like this about myself. And again, even just that change in perspective, it's like something goes from being a problem to being something that's beneficial. Your relationship with yourself and honoring yourself totally changes. You are no longer apologetic. You like own yourself. You feel more confident in who you are. This applies to like a lot of things in our lives, right? So that's one thing. It's like, oh, I'm like proud. I can say now that I take pride in this. I take my time to really process something, because then you know that if I have an opinion about something, or if I am sharing something that I've talked about or teaching on something, there's a good chance it's because I've been really thoughtful about it and I've spent a lot of time with it. I don't just like, I try not to just like pull things out of my ass, basically. And I think that has a lot to do with like my human design. So I'm a 1-4, and the one being like, I'm an investigator. And again, it really speaks to me. I don't know if, for those of you who aren't familiar with human design, but what this is to say that like, I like to get down to the bottom of things, and I like to get a lot of information, which then again can be a gift if I see it that way. And I can be a resource to other people, because when people need to like, a very simple example could be like, if I'm like looking for a new couch to buy or something, I will probably have done all the research. And then the next time I have a friend who needs to buy a couch, they know that they can come to me because I just did it, and they can like really trust my opinion because I have done the due diligence. And again, to be clear, we all need different kinds of friends. I like having friends who are actually like impulsive and who do things quickly and don't need so much time to process, because I think sometimes we can balance each other out. So this isn't to say like, oh, my gift is better than all the other gifts. I'm just saying, if this is something that you resonate with, if you like taking your time, if you feel bad for going slow, if you feel sensitive and like you need time to process, just recognize this is a gift if you honor it, if you let it be, and you don't have to apologize for it. And so it's like, yeah, I feel confident by the time I've done the processing. And like trustworthy, I think. And I think the other thing that I want to say about this, oh yeah, this is an important piece. Let me think how I want to explain this. So, I actually used to feel, how I used the word indulgent earlier, because I was like, I feel like I'm indulgent for taking this time to like journal and be with myself and trying to figure out what I'm feeling and what's my perspective on something. And now that when I say it's like one of my biggest gifts is because it has allowed me to live a life in which I am showing up for exactly what's in front of me. And whatever is in front of me, that is where my work is. And that, I think, is a very revolutionary way to live your life, that I think is very admirable. So what I mean by this, and this isn't always the case, but I think more and more I have been living my life this way, and I see how this just feels like so much more aligned with my values. But you may have heard me give this example before. It's like, if I am focusing on a job, like something with work and a big project that I want to finish, or a new course I want to create, and that's my main focus, and then something else from my personal life comes in, whether it's like my mom needs my help, or something's going on with my partner, or my friend needs something, the world tells you normally that those things are a distraction, that in order for you to be successful in your life, you need to just have laser focus, nose to the grindstone, cut out everything else and focus on this. And that's how you become successful. And I think what I want to offer is something a little bit different, which is to say, because simply put, and if you've been following me, you hear me say this a lot, but what's in the way is the way. These things are not separate. What is going on with my mom, with my family, with my partner, with my friends is not actually separate. And like, but when I say like they need something in me, like meaning they're challenging me in some way, they something's like wrong, and I need to like, maybe like my mom's, I don't know, nagging me about something, and normally I want to be like, no, I don't want to deal with that. Or I'm in an argument with my partner and I'm like, oh, I'm so annoyed because my partner and I are fighting, and like, doesn't he understand that I have this big project that I'm working on? Or like a friend comes in and is like, I need your help because I'm like really struggling, and I'm like, oh my God, like who are these people who are like bothering me? Do you know what I mean? Like, now I more see that everything is all connected, and my work is always to just be with what is, so that if my mom is coming in and she's like nagging me and it's bringing up some trauma and I'm feeling triggered or blah, 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 I actually think that my job isn't to be like, hey, let me just focus on this task here. My job is to be like, okay, what's showing up for me here with my mom? Because there's something for me to learn here. And oftentimes I trust that that lesson that I'm learning with my mother is then ultimately going to help my ultimate goal. Because like nothing is separate, I think is like the way that I think about things now, which is, I think honestly, such a healthier way of living your life rather than feeling like you need to compartmentalize and section things off all the time. What's in the way is the way. Like there's so many things. It's like, I don't know, like maybe your whole thing for, I'm just trying to, there's like so many examples. Maybe your whole thing for 2022 is to like lose weight. Let's just use like a very general cliche. You want to lose weight. And then all of a sudden your friend is like throwing, I don't know, some type of party, a baby shower, I don't know, any something. And you're like, oh my God, like this is going to be really difficult for me because once I get there, I know it's going to be a challenge for me because I'm going to have all these snacks and blah, blah, blah. And it's going to just impede on my goal of making sure that I eat healthy and I don't party hard, I don't drink a ton, whatever. This is a made up example. But my point is that like the goal in that moment isn't to be like, okay, I'm going to like shut myself off from the world and not go to parties and just feel uncomfortable everywhere that I go. It's to be like, okay, what about this party is making me feel so uncomfortable? Like what about this party is the challenge? And then to look at that clearly and to meet that with compassion and gentleness and curiosity and like look at the situation. And as you know, the Buddha says, it's like you invite Mara in for tea. So Mara was, you know, is representative of evil, or and you don't be like, no, evil out. You say, hey, like, let's invite you in for tea. Let's have a conversation. Let's see how we can work together collaboratively and like figure this out. And I want to be clear. So, okay, I mean, I'm going to save like the caveats towards the end because I think there's some ways that what I'm saying can be taken to be distorted, and some people might run with it and like go really intense into one way, and I don't want that. So I'll go into like pitfalls and what you should watch out for at the end. I also want to share with you a story as part of this teacher's meditation course that I'm taking that I think really speaks to this. So hold on, let me pause this video really quick. Okay, so here's a story that is written by Gregory Boyle. He's a Jesuit priest who works with Latino gang members, mostly in the violent parts of LA. So he tells this story about a situation that he had in this book that he writes. So he's in his office and he's between morning mass and he's about to do a baptism. And a woman walks in the room. Her name is Carmen. She's a heroin addict and a gang member and occasional prostitute. And she, as he describes her, she's often seen defiantly storming down the street, usually shouting at someone. So she comes in and he's got a few minutes before he's supposed to do the baptism. And this is what he writes. So she says, I need help. She launches right in, brash, something of a no shit sister. Oh, she says, I've been to like 50 rehabs. I'm known all over, nationwide. She smiles. Her eyes wander around my office. She studies all the photographs hanging there. She multitasks, and her inspection of the place doesn't derail her stream of consciousness rambling. The family will arrive for baptism in 5 minutes. I went to Catholic school all my life. Fact. I graduated from high school even. Fact. Right after graduation is when I started to use heroin. Carmen enters some kind of trance at this point, and her speech slows down to deliberate and halting. And I have been trying to stop since the moment I began. Then I watch Carmen tilt her head back until it meets the wall. She stares at the ceiling, and in an instant, her eyes become these two ponds, water rising to meet their edges, swollen banks spilling over. Then, for the first time, really, she looks at me and straightens. I'm a disgrace. Suddenly, her shame meets mine, for when Carmen walked through the door, I had mistaken her for an interruption. And yeah, that story, I don't know, gets to me because I think that's so much of our life that these things we are so set and clear on doing one thing. Um, and then something comes in and we treat it something that like needs our attention, needs our time to process, and we treat it like it's a distraction. And the point that I want to make is that it's those things that are actually the most important, that are worthy of our time and our presence and they're all the stuff that we need to give it to process. And this is that story. I mean, it's about a lot of things. It's also about compassion, but it's about how I was talking earlier about how what's in the way is the way. Like in that story, this priest had this other, arguably very important thing to do, but his work at that moment, the thing that was actually not just his work. When I say work, it's like it's going to bring him closer to what he believes in and like who he wants to be. And it's not a distraction. That's his path in that moment. And it's like, can we meet our path and whatever shows up for us without feeling apologetic about it and feel like we're taking up too much time? Because ultimately, that's what I mean. Like now that I see things more clearly, I'm like, oh, that's what I was doing all my life. This is what I've been doing all those years when I felt like I didn't want to be rushed. I needed to like take my time to process and go slow and be with things. I was simply just showing up for myself in a very powerful way. And that wasn't wasted time. It wasn't like all of those journals that I spent, writing things down as a kid was wasted. No, it's actually all been super helpful and gotten me to where I am now. And if it wasn't for the fact that I prioritized that and like dedicated my time to those things, I don't think I would be where I am now, which is income. Like I would say gosh, how do I even say this? A place of so much transformation inwardly that it's hard to even recognize who I was before. And meaning just being able to feel more peaceful, more confident, more empowered, more clear, more grounded, more sovereign, like all of these things, which is, what I've been wanting for so much of my life when for many years I felt so completely unstable. So yeah, moral of the story, you don't need to be apologetic for taking time. And in fact, it's not just about not being apologetic, it's about owning it and seeing actually that it's the most effective thing that you can do. It's actually, in my opinion, a really wonderful way to be efficient in the long run. It may not be efficient in the short game, but in the long game, it's actually very efficient because you learn things much quicker. So a couple of like caveats that I want to say. I'm realizing I have to go soon to go record this week's episode of Hello Universe. Yay! Caveats. I understand that this isn't to say that like we all have time to process. I know specifically in my world, there are a lot of busy parents and busy moms who like, to them, it's a luxury. And that's a different story. Sometimes we are in phases of our life where we actually don't have time. And that is a reality that we then need to be with instead of kicking and screaming against it. I mean, obviously you still do as much as you can to find time for yourself and self-care. But I do think there are busy seasons in our life where maybe we want to process, but we can't even do it because there's just too many demands for our attention. And what I'm saying is if you're in that situation, recognize that might be your process where you are right now, but also if you do need to take time for process, you shouldn't have to feel bad about it. If you can't get away because you literally can't get away, sometimes it is just like I'm just going to have to work with what I got situation. But I think a lot of times what I see more of is like women who are moms need time to themselves. And then when they actually do take it, they feel so guilty. And I'm trying to really encourage you and validate and give you permission that like, or have you give yourself permission that this is actually very effective. It's very you're doing important work. You are doing the most important work, I would say. Because anything that helps you bring yourself back to yourself and feel more grounded is a service that you're doing to everyone around you. The other caveat was, notice that all of the advice that I ever give is always subjective, depending on where you are in your journey. So earlier I gave this example of like the party and, you know, not feeling like you needed to build walls against yourself so that you could protect yourself from food cravings or, you know, desserts or whatever, ruining your goal. Sometimes that's needed. Sometimes you need to have really strong boundaries and what's the word I'm looking for? Put like a bubble around yourself in the beginning, depending on where you are, I guess, in your work, because that's the best you can do in that moment. And that's not when I say that's the best thing you can do, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like if you're an alcoholic who's trying to get sober, that's a very admirable thing, to finally cut ties with all the people who you associate with drinking and put yourself into rehab and put yourself in a bubble. And that's like where you are right there, and you need that, but you can't do that for the rest of your life. And so really what I'm saying is like, this is the step for after that. At some point we need to like graduate into a point where we can be like, okay, what feels good for me now? What feels good for me now? Sometimes I need to be in a bubble, and have boundaries, and sometimes I need to be able to use these triggers or these lessons that come in, or these people, as my teachers. And then the third caveat I want to make is, this is when I say it's like you need to take your time to process, this is not the same thing as avoiding. In fact, I would say this is the opposite of avoiding. This is me being very intentional about like showing up for my life. I think sometimes we tend to take a long time to do things because we're procrastinating and avoiding and avoiding and procrastinating and procrastinating. And we like don't want to deal with the thing that we need to deal with. And so then we can easily, I think you could easily take what I say and distort it to me like, oh yeah, like I'm just going to take my time doing things and like never meeting my goals and not acting out of integrity. And like, you know, like maybe you have a goal of going back to graduate school, but you keep like dragging it out and dragging it out and dragging it out because like part of you is just scared shitless and, you know, you're afraid you're not going to get in or something. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about avoidance. That's very different. I trust that you will be able to know the difference that I'm talking about, and that you can run this through your own body, your own perspective, to see what feels true for you. Okay, so I hope this was helpful. This is, again, to all of my soulful sisters out there who want to take their goddamn time. Do it, because I think that you're doing yourself and everyone else a great service. Bye.